Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So, I am in the kitchen doing some canning today. I have got a whole bunch of chicken. I've got this pan full of chicken, and I've got all of this chicken that I have thawed out, and I'm going to be canning this up today. So I have 16 pint jars here. I'm pretty sure that'll be enough. That's what my canner that I'm using today can hold. And so we're going to go ahead and start cubing up all of this chicken. I'm going to be packing this into my jars. I'm doing the raw pack method. So the chicken is just like it sounds. It's raw. So just like it sounds, the chicken is raw to do this. It's kind of easy this way. But I will be covering it up with broth, which I've got over there on the stove warming up. So, let's get to cutting up the chicken. Friends, I'm happy to be partnering with Sanctified Supply Company. They are the people who make all of those great Biblical Feast t-shirts that you often see me wearing, and several more of the shirts that I have. You can find the link to their website in the video description down below and check out all of the things that they make. And when you shop there, you can save 10% if you use my discount code Cornbread. Go check them out. I've got, I actually have two different kinds of chicken. This one is Mary's organic chicken. Came from Asia Standard. I started ordering it from them a while back. After my bad chicken incident that I've talked about recently. But I also get chicken from Good Ranchers, and I've got some of that in here too. I just wanted to go ahead and get that out of the freezer. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just cutting up this chicken into chunks, trying to get, semi-consistent size. It's hard to do when you don't have something that is consistently, the same thickness all the way through. Sometimes it's thinner on one side than the other, but trying to get it relatively close in size. Trimming off any chunks of fat because I don't like chicken fat. I think it's gross. I'm pretty sure this will all fit into my 16 jars. I've got my All-American canner, you can see kind of sitting right there. That's what I will be processing the jars in, because of course meat is a low acid food. You really have to pressure can it. After I get all of these cut up, we'll go ahead and pack it into the jars. And then I've got some broth over there on the stove that I've had heating up. Now the broth I'm using is actually technically it's bouillon. It's the better than bouillon stuff. That's the same thing that I used for the ground beef that I canned recently. Just mix it up according to the jar's instructions. It's basically like a teaspoon per cup. You can make it a little more strong if you want for some added flavor. But I am going to add a little bit of seasoning to these jars when I'm canning them up, just to add a little bit of just basic flavor to the chicken. Because most things I use, most things that I cook, I put onion or garlic or both in. So we'll add a couple things here to the jars as I jar them up. So I'm going to finish cutting up this chicken, and I will join you back here in just a little bit, and we'll jar it up. Alrighty, so time to load up these jars. Let's bring you down here so you can see. So when we are canning chicken like this, you want to fill the jar up to 1 inch of head space. So 1 inch from the top of the jar to the top of the contents of the jar. So I'm going to go ahead and start loading up all these jars, and we'll see how much chicken we have here today. Alright, so that worked out perfectly. I have exactly 16 pints of chicken. Now, I packed the chicken down in there, but I didn't cram it in so tightly that it's like a solid mass. You can see there's plenty of air pockets and everything all through there. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a half a teaspoon of sea salt into every one of these jars. And then I'm going to also add in a quarter of a teaspoon of garlic powder and a quarter of a teaspoon of onion powder in each of these, just to kind of add a little bit of flavor to the jars, to the chicken, so that when I cook it, it just has more flavor. So I have all of the jars here with the chicken in there, the seasonings are in there, the salt, and so now I'm going to ladle in the bouillon that I have mixed up. This is, again, it's the better than bouillon stuff. It's basically chicken broth. And so I'm going to start ladling this into the jars. And once I have the broth in there, I will take my little bubble wand, which is a chopstick for me, and then I will get all of the air bubbles out as much as I can. And so let's get started doing that. Alright, you guys, so I've got my canner filled here. I'm using my pretty green canner again, and I have the 16 jars of chicken in the broth with a little bit of seasoning and all of that. And as always, when canning, take a damp cloth dipped in white vinegar, wipe down the rim of the jar really, really good. Make sure there's no residue, no debris, juices, oils, anything on that lid, or on the jar, I should say, so that there's nothing that's going to hinder your jars from sealing. I've got the water in my canner, and so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the lid on, and we're going to get this started. And really the only tricky part about using these All-American canners is just making sure that you start off with the lid being level, and you just look at the crack between the lid and the base. Make sure it's about the same all the way around. And the easiest way to make gentle adjustments is to take something flat like a butter knife, put it in the crack and just give it a little turn, and that will lift up that side, because if it isn't level, you're not going to get a good seal. So you want to start off with that being level, because what'll happen if you don't have that good seal, you'll know right away. And there's only been one time where I have used an All-American canner and I've had this happen, but it started getting hot, it started venting steam out of there, and I suddenly saw steam coming out the side. And so it wasn't, the lid was not level enough. I had to turn off the heat, let it cool down a little bit, straighten it out, and start over. All right, so we tighten opposite sides at the same time, a little bit at a time, tighten it down, just like you're changing a spare tire or a tire on a vehicle. You don't want to crank it too hard, because you don't want to like snap the handles or anything. Alright, so that is ready. Now we turn on the stove. We'll let this come up to temperature. We'll let that vent out a solid, steady stream of steam for 10 minutes. Then we put on the weight, and this is going to be 10 pounds pressure for 75 minutes because it is pints, and that is based on my elevation. Of course, you do want to adjust if you live at a higher elevation, and I have an article where I explain that, and I will link to that in the video description down below. Alright, y'all, so I have a live video going right here. So we're talking to all my YouTube friends over there while we've got the canning going, but the timer just went off. We have the steady steam that's been flowing out, that builds up the pressure, builds up the temperature, so that makes it ready to put the weight on. And where I live, it's 10 pounds pressure. So we've got the 10. We're just going to pop this on. And now we're going to let the pressure come up to 10 pounds. And when this starts rattling on a regular basis, you know, a few times a minute, then we'll start our timer. Alright friends, so as I was editing this video, I realized I had somehow lost the clip where I was pulling all of the hot jars from the canner and then talking about them cooling overnight and all of that. So the next day I went through all of the jars that I had been canning up, the orange juice, the cranberry sauce, and the chicken. I pulled off all of the rings, I tested all of the seals, and then I washed all of the jars with soapy, warm water with a splash of vinegar in it to remove any sort of residue that could be on those jars. Then I dried them off, labeled them, and put them in the pantry. So thanks for joining me here again at the homestead. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and I'll talk to y'all next time.